Hey guys, Woods Farm here, back working on the Kubelwagen project. So in my last video I mentioned I was going to start the electrical. I do want to start that. I'm going to order some parts online and I'm going to start doing the wiring. However, I'm looking at the dashboard and I need a place to mount the fuse panel and a power distribution block, all the electrical stuff on the front end. I need a place to mount it. Now there's basically two models of dash in the Kubelwagens. There's the early model and there's the late model. The early model is basically what you'd see in an early Beetle. It has a very nice kind of Bakelite kind of molding around the dash, around the instrument cluster and the speedometer. It's a little fancier. As the war progressed, they switched to a dash that was a little simpler, and it was actually the same dash layout that they used in the Schwimmwagen. So this is a picture of that kind of late war setup. Now, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to perfectly replicate this for a couple of reasons. The first thing is I'm going to be reusing the Thing speedometer, which is much larger than the Kubelwagen speedometer. It's quite a bit bigger. The other thing that I'm not going to be able to replicate is this black area here, this little box pops out. That's the fuse panel, and it gives you easy access to the fuses for maintenance. I'm not going to be able to get my hands on a fuse panel that's like this. I'm going to have to go, because I'm modernizing the internals of the electrical system, the fuse panel is going to be different. So long story short, I'm only going to be able to do an anachronism of this kind of dash layout. I am going to kind of aim for the later model kind of look, but it's obviously going to have to incorporate the larger speedometer. So I'll show you what I've got so far over on the Kubelwagen. So here's what I've got so far. And earlier, I've already had the speedometer and had some of this wired up, but that's the ignition switch, starter button. That is the oil pressure warning light and the speedometer. And you can see how much larger it is. There's no space up here for a fuse panel of any kind, really. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to extend this out about 5 inches this way, and I'm going to make a little box with a fold down cover, and behind that cover is going to be all the kind of stuff that you need to access, the fuses, the flasher, all that kind of stuff, relays. It'll all be mounted behind this little door that's going to kind of fold down. So hopefully it kind of just blends in. It's not going to come over too far, because if you notice on the Kubelwagen, fuel tank's kind of exposed over here. So I'm going to come out 5.5 inches and build a little box. And that's the best I can come up with. I considered mounting the fuses on the firewall under the dash, but what's going to end up happening is if I have to do any rewiring or any maintenance, it's going to be very difficult to crawl under there. Not impossible, but it's just going to be really inconvenient to get to that wiring. So that's what I've got so far for the box. You can see there's my fuse panel. Okay, so that's the box done, roughly in position. There's going to be 2 mounting screws on the top and the bottom that will allow me to actually move the box if I want to. I'm also going to extend the back of the box here behind the instrument panel, and it'll give me a mounting point for some of the relays and things like that. And the wires are going to come straight up along the tunnel here, and they're going to come right up and come in from the side. So when the door flips down, it will it'll cover this opening here. You won't see that. Okay, so just going to leave the fuse box panel project aside. I'm going to maybe try to come up with another idea. So in the meantime, I'm going to turn my attention to this battery. So what has to happen is the Kubelwagen had like a wooden box. So I'm going to do the same sort of idea. I'm going to build a box to enclose the battery, and that box will get bolted down to the floor pans. The other day I was in Ottawa and I picked up this master cutoff switch, so that's going to get incorporated into the system. It'll probably be bolted on the side of the battery box, so you'll be able to reach underneath the seat and switch it off. So that's what I'm working on tonight. Okay, I'm just drilling and countersinking holes to build the box. Okay, just got 2 mounting holes completed on the bottom of the box. These are countersunk, so they're flush. The battery will sit right on top, and these are the points where you will bolt the box onto the floor pans. That gives you an idea of how the box is going to get mounted. I'm actually going to go ahead and drill the holes through the floor pans. I'm going to use the actual piece of wood as the template. I realized once the box is put together, it will be difficult to get in there and drill. So I'm going to do it now. Okay, so earlier in the spring I wired up the ignition system with a key and a starter button just so I could run the engine. But this wiring harness that I have is going to be a lot more substantial, so I have to drill this hole out here. To do that I got to remove this, so I have to unconnect everything from the back end, pull it through, and I'm going to increase the size of this hole. That way, you know, there's wire here, this comes from the generator, that's got to go to the battery. There's a main power cable that's got to go from the battery up to the front, so we'll start with that. Well, it's a pretty time-consuming process figuring all this wiring out. Not to mention, when you do the research online, there's multiple ways that you can wire this type of a system. So basically I've got the voltage regulator mounted just behind the battery box where that's going to be. I think at a later date I'll probably move it into the engine compartment. That's probably where it should be. But for now, it's going to go there. And basically the battery goes to a ground from the negative. The positive has, this is like a 4-gauge cable that jumps off the positive and goes back to the starter. Now I've seen two different ways that this can go from here. I don't know if anybody watching might want to comment on what they think's best, but to get main power to the front, we got to bring power from the battery. Now there's two ways I've seen this done. You can jump right off the battery terminal and go up to the fuse panel, or it can come right off the starter solenoid, and that's what I've got rigged up right now for the ignition system. That's what I did initially, but I'm debating on running straight off the battery. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet. I believe if I look at the wiring diagram correctly for the Kubelwagen, and probably also the Type 181 thing, it looks like it comes off of the starter. However, looking at some hot rod wiring guides, it looks like a lot of other guys will take it straight off the battery. So I'm not sure where to go from there, but I think both ways will work. So I just played around with getting this wiring bundle. This is basically the ignition system, the starter, the generator warning light, and the oil pressure warning light. And there's also a main power wire, which right now is only like 16 gauge, but I have it on my list. I'm going to go get 11 feet of probably 10 gauge for the main power. This is what I've got on the back end. There's a small harness with a plastic covering that goes to the distributor and also powers the carburetor stuff, the automatic choke and the cutoff. And this is the generator. Again, it's a heavy gauge wire. This black wire is for the warning light, and they run down and they cut through this back wall, firewall. So at some point I'm going to have to figure out, I'm going to have to clean all this up. There's the main hole. It goes through the back of the body. This has got to be large too, because this is going to be wires for the brake system, and the tail lights are all going to come through there as well. Okay, so I'm just going to wrap it up there. I can't get much further. I've got some parts on order, relays, a power distribution block, and some switches, a high-low beam dimmer switch, and a light switch. So when that gets here, I can continue doing some more of the wiring. I'm going to have to go to the local auto parts place and get some 10 gauge. I need about 11 feet of that for the main power, and some odds and ends. But hopefully the basic wiring will be in place and I can just build on it as I go. Yeah, thanks for watching. Definitely like and subscribe. Gonna be trying to put up Kubelwagen videos every week, maybe 2 weeks. So there'll be a lot more coming as winter progresses. Thanks for watching.